Hi, in this video I'm going to set up AuthLite in a new domain and show how to configure the default settings so that you can secure your domain admin users, because it's the most common use case that we get asked about, and it's a tricky configuration to get right if you haven't done it before. Along the way, I will show a couple of scenarios you will run into and how to troubleshoot them. Please also feel free to request support from our contact page if you encounter anything that's different from what I'm describing here in a way that is confusing. We are happy to help. So first, we must install AuthLite on the domain controllers. I have two domain controllers in this domain. I'm going to start by launching this installer. Now you'll see this installer needs to be launched as a UAC elevation right away. Because of that, this installer will change the right-click menu for MSIs to add Run as Administrator to the menu. It really wasn't there before. It's only there once you receive the error. So I'll run it that way. And the next thing we'll run into is that in order to install AuthLite, I will need to be an enterprise and schema admin as well as a domain admin. So if I accept the defaults here, it'll start working and then give me this error because I'm not actually a schema admin. Okay, so I understand that these things are going to be required. I'm going to add myself to enterprise and schema admins so that I can complete the provisioning items that the installer has to do. Because I'm a domain admin on the root domain, I'm permitted to add myself to enterprise and schema. But then, of course, those groups will only take effect after I log off and log back in. Okay, once again, for real, I'm going to run accept the defaults. And after the install on a DC, we must restart. I will wait for this domain controller to come back before starting install on the next one. All right, domain controller is back up. It will launch the AuthLite configuration the first time after you run an install on a fresh DC. All right, now I'm just going to do the same procedure on the second DC. We must install AuthLite on all of your DCs because authentications can go to any of the domain controllers, and it's not possible to route those connections to some subset of DCs that has AuthLite installed. All of the DCs authenticate at themselves, so we need each one to understand AuthLite. So same as before, run as administrator is not there yet. I'll run it this way once, get the error, and then it'll be added. And I proceed through the install with defaults. And then when you see this error, sometimes we're installing a little faster than the replication between the DCs is operating. Operations error comes out of the directory APIs. So I'll let this roll back safely, and I'll just go to sites and services and ask it to do some replication for me between the two DCs. And now it's fine. Okay, this DC is done installing. I'll restart. Meanwhile, I'll go back to the first one and begin configuration. First thing we need to do is get a license. Do this by going to authlight.com/license. I'll do that here on my workstation. So it wants the license ID, which is shown here. It's the short name of your domain. So I will enter that here, and you fill out the rest of it. If you're doing an evaluation, you can say eval or give it your order number, and we'll return a license key that is appropriate for your domain. So after I have that, I will enter it here by clicking click here, and here's my license key, click apply. And now I'm licensed to proceed. The next thing I will do is run some default setup items that are needed for most customers to use AuthLite. So I'll run this administrator PowerShell. I'm accepting the certificate from AuthLite. Now, one thing you'll notice here is I'm actually not running as an administrator. It's admin PowerShell, but I'm not running as UAC elevated. So when I attempt to do things, it will complain at me that I'm not UAC elevated. So I'm just going to type the UAC as a command here. We have this command written in the script in order to facilitate relaunching the same window under elevation, so you don't have to do the right click thing. So now I've run the same command, but I'm under administrator now. I'll say do default setup. So the first thing it does is check to make sure that I've got replicas on all of the DCs, which I do. It will create groups for the AuthLite users to be part of and to track how the authentications were done. It's telling the domain controllers that the AuthLite DA group should be allowed to remote in. It's turning on soft tokens after checking that there's no conflicts. It's creating a replay window for remote desktop, which you can read more about in the documentation. And then it's going to check my group policy to see what state of affairs the group policy is in by default. So the group policy output from the check group policy command is this XML tree that shows you your OU structure wherever there are policies defined. Right now, I don't have any policies defined that are denying logons. The logon denies are the part of the user rights assignment group policy that AuthLite uses to tell computers that they should be blocking one factor for the AuthLite users. So this policy is empty because this is a brand new domain. So in this case, it's an easy decision. I don't have anything to collide with, so I can just say create group policy, and it will load the appropriate AuthLite group policy into the root and link it there. Now, if I say check group policy, it will run the same check as before, but tell me the new result. Okay, now we see that the policies are defined and we've got green lines instead of the former yellow lines, saying that there were no denies defined. So what does it actually mean? Let's take a look at this, what it has done for us in group policy, because you'll need to understand this enough in certain cases to see if it needs to be changed. Although the defaults are designed to be very conservative and only affect AuthLite users. So at the root, we have created a new policy. All of these user rights assignment denies will be applied in this computer policy. And the deny says, if the user is in the AuthLite group and they have not done two-factor, then do not let them log in. So despite the fact that this is applied at the root, it will only impact AuthLite users, as only AuthLite users will ever have this group, and therefore only those will get denied. So this is a very simple configuration where we want to apply this everywhere, but not completely entirely everywhere. There is another slight eccentricity to this, which is worthy of note, which is that domain controllers will have network deny defined as blank. So instead of having AuthLite one-factor tag deny like the other one, this is defined as nothing. And the reason that is the case is so domain controllers, if we do a model to see what the OU will actually have, this OU will have the 4 denies inherited from the root, and then the blank deny defined locally in the computer policy. The purpose of this is I want to allow one-factor network access to domain controllers because things like group policy and password changes and accessing the sysvol and other important operations all need to continue to work even for AuthLite users. So I don't want to deny one-factor access to the network on DCs. So this the create group policy script is smart enough to do both of those things, create the root and then make sure the domain controller's policy doesn't block network. So these greens mean both of those things are true and done. Now, there are certain cases where the policy script is not smart enough to do the right thing. And for example, if I have an Exchange server, I don't want to do a network deny for that either because that would break your Activesync mailboxes. You can't be entering a one-time code every time your phone goes to synchronize email. So we have to exempt Exchange servers from doing network deny. So let's imagine that I have an Exchange server in my lab. I don't, but let's pretend that I do, and it's in this OU called Exchange. I'm going to make a policy by hand that will do an allow. Even though I'm calling it allow, really, I'm overruling the deny. So the same way that the domain controller's policy did, I'm going to do that here. I'll show you by manually going into the user rights assignment section, defining deny access to network, but leaving the list empty. So now if I do a model of this Exchange OU, where we are pretending that I have Exchange servers, we'll see that the result is similar to what happened with the domain controllers. Under user rights assignment, we will have 4 inherited denies from the root and then 1 empty one defined locally here by my new policy. This is so Activesync can work even for AuthLite users without having any problems. If your AuthLite users will never have email boxes, then you don't have to do this exception, but otherwise you should. And this is, again, assuming your Exchange servers are in this OU. If they're somewhere else like the computer's container, then you need to move them to somewhere that you can apply a specialized group policy to them. Okay, so now that I made that manual change, let's do this check again, and I'll show you how this affects the graph output because you'll want to understand the nature of this. So you'll see everything is green, but now I've got another OU listed here, my new Exchange OU that I created for the Exchange server. And you'll see I've got a yellow line in here that says, hey, just so you know, network access is not being denied. That's why it's yellow, and it's not being denied because of this policy, which is the one that I just manually created. So as far as the script is concerned, this is a defect that should be corrected, but really we know that I just did this on purpose, and so this is okay. The script isn't there to tell you that you have to do things a certain way, but it's there to help you assess your policy. So in that spirit, let's take another bit of complexity that you'll probably have some of in your domain. Let's make an OU. I'm going to make an OU called inherit blocked, and actually do that. I'm going to say inheritance is blocked. So now if I run the script again, it's going to tell me that there's an entire OU where there's no enforcement, there's no denies. And it's painted this OU blue to signify the inheritance is blocked so you can visually see it. And it'll tell you that there's nothing linked under here. Even under the inheritance blocking, you probably want to do your AuthLite block too. Even if you have reasons to block other policies, it's most likely that you actually want to have the AuthLite rule still under there. So I manually linked it, and I can run this check again, and it'll say that's fine. I've still got my blue, but underneath it, everything is happy green. Okay, but what if you've got a lot of inheritance blocked? So I'm going to delete this link here. What if you've got a whole ton of these, and like 20 or 50 or 100, and you don't want to manually link that? Group policy has the ability to do an enforce where it would punch through the inheritance blocks, but I don't like to use those for a variety of reasons. It messes up the ordering of group policy and causes a lot of other strife. So we've got the ability to do script, so I'm just going to use a script. You can use in the AuthLite tool a script called apply policy everywhere. And assuming that this is your policy name, you don't need to supply an additional argument. But if you have a different policy name you want to apply, you can put that name here. And what this will do is walk through all of your OUs and make sure that each one of them has the policy applied underneath it so that all of your blue inheritance blocks will have it. So before I run this, let me just show you, I've reverted my inheritance blocks. So I've got my yellow warnings here again. So now if I say apply policy everywhere, it'll walk the OUs and say, okay, I've applied this policy under this OU. Fine. So if I run the check again, now we're back to happy greens everywhere. So it has done that link. The same thing that I did manually, it has now done this. So if I refresh, it'll show me here. So these are tools you can use to automate some portions of this and some reasons why you might want to do exceptions. So now we've got all of the inheritance done. So the domain understands how to enforce two-factor, but I still don't have any two-factor users. My AuthLite users group has been created, but it's empty. So now it's finally time to do something about that. So I'm logged in with this user called myadmin, and this is the one that I want to convert to be an AuthLite user. Let's take a moment and ask the script to tell us something about our administrators. You will want to run this yourself because there's 4 out of 5 times there'll be some surprise in here that you don't know. So this script, print users and power groups, will tell you everybody in the domain who can take over the domain and some advice about how they may relate to AuthLite. So for example, the built-in administrators group of the domain, you shouldn't have anybody in here except for the built-in administrator. The fact that I have a service account in here, this should probably be in domain admins if I want it to be there. You shouldn't have anything in built-in except for the built-in administrator. For domain admins, you will always want to have one account left purposefully outside of AuthLite control. Whether you use AuthLite or any other third-party thing, you want this to be true. You don't want to put all of your administrator eggs under a third-party basket, because then if something happens with the third-party software, it becomes misconfigured or fails to start when the server starts at one point, you may then no longer have any actual domain admins. Part of what we're going to do with the domain admin accounts is take them out of their administrator group so that they're safe by default and have that dynamically provisioned by AuthLite. So, but I'm going to leave the built-in administrator out of AuthLite, and ideally we will make a randomly generated long password for it and save it somewhere for emergency uses. So this is your break glass account, and I'm not going to touch it with AuthLite, but I will want to change this one. So back to his groups. This is the set of groups he has: domain admins, all these other administrator features. So what I want to do is strike all of these power groups and add him to a group called AuthLite DA. And this group will be used by AuthLite to dynamically grant him domain administrator privileges in the future. So when he has AuthLite DA and logs in properly with 2 factors, we will substitute AuthLite DA for domain admins, adding domain admins into their active session. So in order to do this, we have to be exactly correct about removing all of the power groups. If we leave him in any of these administrator groups, the security will be broken. That's a lot of responsibility to remember for a human. And part of the reason of this script is to print all of the groups that have power. So if I had a group that was a member of some other group that was a member of some other group that was eventually nested into domain admins, this print script would show it. It would show this group in the sequence of events all the way to the administrator power group. So it's important to do this so you make sure that you don't have any surprises about which groups are nested. So having said that, there is a script that will use this intelligence to correctly convert the user's groups for use with AuthLite, and it's called convert user groups. And you can give it a list of usernames. I'm just going to give it the one that I want to use. If I had others, I could do a comma separated list of them. So I'm going to convert user groups with username myadmin, and it's going to pull me out of domain admins and put me into AuthLite DA. It's going to add me to AuthLite users. It's going to remove me from schema and enterprise admins. And it's going to give me an important warning, which just says, by the way, you're in the AuthLite users group, but you don't have any tokens yet, so you're not going to be able to log in. Okay, well, that's fine. We can only do one thing at a time. So now I will assign him a token, which I'll just use a soft token here for quick convenience. Put his username in here, or if I want, I could click select user and search for it like this. Once you have the correct username, you click setup, and I will beep this into my authenticator app on my phone so that he has a token code. So now, if I want to log in as this user, let's do a remote desktop to the domain controller from here, my workstation. So I'll say DC1. and it will ask me for my password. And then the domain controller will connect me and ask me for my one-time code. And because AuthLite is installed on this server, it knows to ask me for my code, and it won't let me in without it because of that group policy that's in place. Also, I'm no longer effectively an administrator until I have provided my two-factor. So because of that group switching that we did. So I'll put in my one-time code. And now I can connect. And I'm actually connecting back to my existing session, which is now locked on the console side because I'm logging in as the same user. So to review, if I look at my user fresh now after the groups have been changed by the script, we'll see that all of my admin groups are gone. I'm just in AuthLite DA. This is the state you want to be in. Okay, well, what happens if something is messed up with this user and I want to put him back out of AuthLite again to temporarily troubleshoot what's going on? We can later on re-add him again. So I can run the convert script again, and I can say to AuthLite $false. This is instead of $true is the normal state for it, but you can say to AuthLite false to reverse the process. So now it'll take him back out of AuthLite DA and put him into domain admins. It'll remove him from AuthLite users. And so once this is switched, his rights are back to the way they were. Now you'll notice I don't have enterprise admin and schema admin anymore, but that's fine. I can always add myself back to these if I need to. The main point is that I'm toggled back to the root of the domain admins. So once I'm out of AuthLite, if I want to connect, it will simply let me in with password like it always used to. That's how to secure domain admins with AuthLite and soft tokens. The system remembers that I used to be an AuthLite user, even though I don't currently have to do that. So I'm just ignoring this one-time passcode field here. And let's put myself back into that group, the AuthLite group, so that I can continue provisioning a hardware token for him. Okay, so I'm going back into the AuthLite group and back into the AuthLite DA group. Fine. Okay, so now let's do a hardware token. So with a YubiKey hardware, you need to actually have a physical port that the key is plugged into. So let's do that here. I'm going to plug the key physically into this VMware workstation. And see, it's getting set up here by the USB subsystem on my Windows machine because this machine is brand new and has not ever seen a YubiKey before. Meanwhile, in order to do interactive logons and other things like YubiKey programming, I'm going to install AuthLite on this client machine. You should install AuthLite anywhere that you plan to interactively log on with AuthLite users. Okay, if I have a paddle that can do near field communication with a YubiKey NFC, I could install that feature here. If I wanted to manage tokens on this workstation, like the list of tokens for all users, I'll put that on here because I want to do that. Otherwise, if you leave it off, then the management tool will only be on the DC. And this takes a restart like usual. Okay, I'll log in. Sometimes right after you do the install, it will come up and show this text here, AuthLite logon. This indicates that this machine does not have the settings from the domain side yet. So it came up so fast that the service couldn't pull the domain controller to read the settings for AuthLite. Once I have the correct settings, this will disappear and the dialog will do the normal interactive where it asks for the one-time code separately. So I don't have that now. So if I just try to type in my password, it'll tell me that this is wrong. I have to follow these instructions when the dialog is this way. And if I just went away and waited, this would reconcile itself. I'm just going a little too fast. So I'll do what it says, which is to put the password in, followed by a dash, and then the code from my phone afterwards. So that's a way to put in credentials as well. All right, I want to enroll with a hardware token, so I'm going to use this enroll tool. Any AuthLite install on a client will have this available. So this checks my connection to the domain, makes sure the settings are updated. This would also fix my login screen issue. I'm already an AuthLite user because of the provisioning we did on the DC. It already knows that I have a token provisioned to soft token, but I want to set up a hardware token, and this is a convenient way to do it. This tool is also useful for provisioning users on workstations that are at the end of a VPN or disconnected most of the time, and there'll be a separate video about this I'm just using the tool to set up my YubiKey here more conveniently. So I've got the hardware plugged in, and in order to set up, it wants me to type in my password and my existing one-time code for my soft token. So I'll do what it asks me here. I have to prove who I am before I can provision additional tokens as myself. Okay, now it says, please tap the YubiKey. And then I'll click continue. Okay, it's provisioned, and now it's caching my credentials for offline logon, which means once this is done like this, now I am assured that if I take the machine offline and attempt to log into it with the YubiKey, this will work. Once everything is green and happy, then you are able to do offline logins with the YubiKey. Also, you can use the YubiKey for online logins as well. So if I wanted to do my remoting to the domain controller like before, and I can do my password, and now we see AuthLite is installed on this workstation, so it's being friendly here and offering me a place to put the YubiKey value. So I just tap the key and it'll type in its code, and I can log into the DC. Same if I want to log into the console, I have to just, oh, hold on, let me unplug the YubiKey from my workstation and put it back to the host. Now, if I want to log into the console, I need my password, and then I need to press the button on the YubiKey, or I could do my soft token. So this user effectively has two different tokens, and you can see which tokens a user has by looking at the token manager application. I've got this user defined, and he's got a hardware token, YubiKey, and also a soft token. So at a simplistic level, this is how you start from a clean environment, install AuthLite, and use it to secure administrators. You can use the print users and power groups function to check which users you've got left outside of AuthLite. You'll see that my administrator user is now gone from this list. The built-in is here, but the user that I'm logging in as is not in this list anymore because he has been taken out of his default power groups and placed safely into the AuthLite DA group. And that's how AuthLite operates for protecting dynamically the domain admin accounts. So I hope you found this useful. As you run your own installs, if your script throws on errors that are inscrutable for you to correct, or you have a divergent set of circumstances from the ones I've described here, everybody has included support with their purchase. We can also help you before your purchase to do your evaluation and get it set up properly. This entire quick start walkthrough hopefully gave you some grounding in what kinds of things you'll be in for and what to look at, but we don't expect you to become an expert in it by a quick video. This is hopefully helpful, but not intended to be comprehensive. In any case, good luck with it, and let us know if we can be of assistance. And thanks for watching.